Greetings, travelers, and welcome back to Goldbound, the challenge series where our rogue Goldylocked is unlocking the World of Warcraft one zone at a time. Each token earned opens up the gates to a new zone, new farms, and new gold per hour to discover. And last episode, we pushed into the Swamp of Sorrows, testing the elementals, the growls, the Sunken temple, and anything else that could bring in some gold. But when we checked the mailbox, we only had 200,000 gold. Still about 130,000 gold short of the next WoW token. So travelers, it's back to the Swamp of Sorrows. Now, while Goldie is out here gathering, let's take a moment to talk about the WoW token, because right now, it's sitting at historical highs. Take a look at this DSM graph. Back in late September, the NA token price was hovering around 283,000 gold. But with the release of Legion Remix, it spiked as high as 373,000 gold. And recently, it's been holding steady in the 310 to 330,000 gold range. And that means we'll need anywhere between 110 and 130,000 gold to reach our target. So, let's not dally. And if you're watching last episode closely, you may have noticed there was one type of farm that we didn't dive too deeply into. A Goldylocked classic, fishing. Now, historically fishing has been a little bit of a meme farm, but I'd like to compare it for each zone, and so far, Redridge has taken the top spot, then Burning Steppes, followed by Elwyn Forest, with some pretty low level fish. Luckily, we've already pushed our skill to 300 classic fishing, so there's no leveling grinding needed. And in Swamp of Sorrows, there's two main ways to fish for gold, and today we're testing both to see which one comes out on top. Now the first option is fishing directly from pools and schools, and these are mostly stone scale eel swarms out here, and the loot table isn't too exciting, with stone scale eels selling for only 1 gold and 66 silver each. But these pools do have a chance to drop mithril bound trunks. There isn't a confirmed drop rate on Wowhead, but it seems to be somewhere around 5%. Now the trunks themselves can contain a mix of green BOEs and recipes, a bit of the RNG loot pinata. Now we can also find floating wreckage pools that spawn in the same locations as the eels. They're rare spawns, so to get them to appear, we'll need to clear out all of the eel pools. The wreckage pools drop them at a much higher rate. And they also add iron lockboxes to the mix. So the pool method is definitely a loot box opening angle. So to get a fair read on the numbers, let's go ahead and farm for 1 hour, see how many mithril lockboxes we can gather up, and see what kind of loot is hiding inside of them. Alright, and here's the haul. 27 mithril bound trunks, and 2 iron bound trunks. Now of course, while fishing, I also snagged a couple of coastal rare spawns that total in about 2,200 gold in item value. And the raw fish of the eels is worth a solid few hundred gold, putting the pre-box opening value at 2,640 gold. Of course, the 2,200 gold from rares is pretty random, and there may or may not be a rare spawn when we fish this every time, but today we got it. But onto the boxes. And at first, it's nothing special, but about halfway through, check this out. The Glyphed Epaulets, a leather shoulder worth about 2,500 gold, and not too far long after, the Black Forge Girdle, clocking in at about 964 gold. Now the rest of the boxes just have some trade goods, some leather, and some cloth, but in total, we pulled in 4,200 gold from the 29 boxes, giving us an average box value of about 149 gold each. And that puts our net gold per hour for the pool farm at 6.8 thousand gold, which really isn't bad. But keep in mind, about 5,000 of that is transmog value, which will sell slower, and the remaining 1.8 thousand does come from fish and leather and miscellaneous trade goods. So it's a pretty decent dual farm. But like I said, we still need to test open water fishing, because there are some big fish available here. But first, let's talk about the sponsor of our video today, AG1. And to best do that, let's pop into IRL. There we go. Because we don't just min-max gold here, we min-max nutrition. So if you don't know, in real life I compete as a powerlifter, so I'm always trying to find ways to min-max that side of my life as well, and lately, AG1 has been the go-to for that. I think even Stella likes it. All I've been doing is having about 12 ounces of water, which is handling one of these bottles and filling it up with one of these scoops or one of the travel packs. Now before I was taking AG1, I was taking a myriad of supplements. We're talking multivitamins, probiotics, prebiotics, and even a mineral and electrolyte supplement in the morning. Nowadays, all I do is take an AG1 and 1 scoop of creatine, and I'm good to go. Quite literally, AG1 has cut my supplement stack in the morning down from about 7 or 8 things to just 2. So head to my link or scan the QR code to get a free welcome kit, including a bottle of vitamin D and free AG1 travel packs when you first subscribe. And thank you to AG1 for sponsoring today's adventures. But without further ado, let's get back into this fishing. This time, open water only. This is the first time we've taken this angle on Goldie, but it's worth it because the fish available in the open waters here have some insane value. First off, the large raw mite fish. This sits at a market value average of about 280 gold for a single fish. And if we can snag a few of these, it's going to be a good day on the waters. But since this is open water fishing, even with a max skill of 300, we're still pulling up some trash. So to offset that, I'm using the best fishing bobbles we've got, picked up from our Red Ridge fishing friend. This just increases our fishing by about 5 skill, so hopefully a few of our casts out of our hour of farming will be fish and not trash. And from the open coastal waters here in the swamp, we can catch pretty much every zone appropriate fish. But the coastal water aspect is important. It's the only spot we can actually get the mite fish. The inland inlets do not have it. But the salty waters have mite fish and stone scale eels. They also carry dark claw lobster and winter squids. Now these squids are actually worth noting because they have a solid price of about 86 gold each. And here's the thing. They can only be fished up during the winter months. So, holding on to them until summer could make for a pretty decent profit. But I'm sure you're wondering, why is large raw mite fish worth 280 gold? I haven't found anything too specific, but they seem to be one of the best options for leveling high-end classic cooking if you're trying to get up to 300. And since the drop rate is low, most players just don't want to farm them themselves. Now, because they were kind of best in slot in Classic, what I think is probably happening is they're probably listed as one of the fish you should buy on some of the top 1 to 300 Classic fishing leveling guides. And some people just don't check and see if there's cheaper options. That's my best guess anyways. So, after an hour of fishing, how did the totals play out? Well, we still managed to pull 2 boxes from the open water. We have some Venture Co supplies, which I guess just wash up on shore. But for the fish themselves, we got 18 large raw mite fish. And at about 250 gold each, that's 4,500 gold in mite fish alone. We also got 63 dark claw lobsters, which are 6 gold, 60 silver each. 11 big mouth clams, which 15 gold each. And remember, we're not opening these, we're gonna sell them unopened. We also got 22 stone scale eels at 1 gold, 68 silver each. And 20 winter squid at 92 gold each for a total of 1,840 gold. Not bad. Now we also got a handful of small catches like the 3 raw spotted yellowtail, not worth much. But we did get a few bonus rare fish. We got a 9-pound lobster and a 12-pound lobster. These show market values of a few hundred gold, but these won't sell quickly, if at all. But I'm hoping that with the new player housing coming out in midnight, we might be able to display these on Goldylock's walls, so I'm probably not going to try to sell them. And the lock boxes and supplies we fished up didn't contain all that much, so really, it's just the fish value that carried this run, landing us in at 7,400 gold for the hour. But travelers, this is future Goldylock speaking, and something interesting happened. When we went to list these mite fish, it looks like someone did a reset on the market, and they were suddenly going for over 900 gold. Now, if the fish we farm sell at this price, this farm would jump to over 19,000 gold per hour, which would make it not only the best fishing farm so far, but the highest trade good gold per hour farm in the entire challenge so far. Of course, we'll still have to wait for the mailbox reveal to see if any of them actually sell at this inflated price. And I'll be poking around here to catch a few more. But keep in mind, the mite fish do have a low sale rate, around 30 to 60 per day, so they're definitely not all going to move at once. But if they trickle out at this good price, that's pretty crazy. For now though, the mite fish are posted on the auction house, and it's time to get after some other farms. Now travelers, as we know, there's only one dungeon in this zone, the Sunken Temple. So let's head back in for some more farming and see if we can optimize the way we're running it. Because we've been farming it with skinning level 300. But here's the thing, classic skinning isn't always about max level, and the most valuable skin you can actually get is heavy hide, usually worth around 100 to 150 gold. But the best chance to get heavy hides is actually with skinning level 175 to 205, and particularly from skinning Dragonkin. So here's the experiment. If we reset skinning from 300 back down to level 1, and re-level it inside the dungeon farming the Sunken Temple, we'll naturally pass through that sweet spot of 175 to 205. The question is, will we pick up any extra heavy hides? And will this offset the lost value from farming through all those early scraps of light leathers and rugged leather scraps? Well, let's find out. Of course, leather isn't the only thing on the menu here, and the real Sunken Temple prize are rare BOE weapons, and there's about 8 unique drops. Now we talked about Death Blow and Stealth Blade last episode, which are 2 of the cooler ones, but there's also Rage Hammer, a 2-handed mace worth around 209,000 gold. Then there's the Bludgeon of the Grinning Dog, a staff worth about 120,000 gold. And also, I kinda just wanna know which dev named the items in Sunken Temple, because these names are wild. But anyways, there's also the Stinging Bow, coming in at around 78,000 gold, though its appearance isn't anything that special. And Winter's Bite, a 1-handed axe with a massive 250,000 gold price tag. Now of course they're all insanely rare, but just one of these would be a huge win for the transmog shelves. So, after an hour of testing, here's how it shook out. Running from 1 to 300 skinning in the dungeon, we ended up with almost every kind of hide in the game, including 5 heavy hides, which is of course always welcomed. And that totaled about 4,368 gold worth of leather from the hour of farming. Adding that to the 7,000 gold in transmog value we got. Compare that to last episode, when we were running the same dungeon with 300 skinning, we averaged about 4,500 gold per skins. So honestly, it's nearly even. The downside is that re-leveling skinning clogs up your inventory with scraps and different leather tiers, so you lose out on a few bag spaces doing the 1 to 300, but if we ever need to get some heavy hides for crafting, this will probably be our best bet. And hey, at least we tested it, and now we know. And as far as rare drops, none during the test hour. But while farming outside of the tests, we actually snagged our first Sunken Temple BOE, the Stinging Bow. Now it does carry a 78,000 gold price tag, but truthfully, it's the least exciting of the bunch in terms of appearance and demand, but still, it's our first blue BOE from the temple, and with only 130,000 gold required for our next token, if this sells quickly, it's definitely a game changer. But okay, travelers, now that we're out of the temple, let's shift gears to something else. Something a little more seasonal. And if you can tell by the pumpkins scattered all around, yep, travelers, it's the seasonal event, Hallow's End. So for the last 2 weeks of October, the Headless Horseman terrorizes Azeroth with ghoulish delight. But what does that mean for Goldylocked? Well, luckily, one of the main Alliance event hubs is right here in Elwyn Forest, which, with our currently unlocked zones, we are free to travel through. Now, in this zone, there's a few things going on. There's festivities, quests, but a big ticket one is event vendors. And they offer transmog and cosmetics in exchange for the event currency, tricky treats. But we're not here for transmog, because everything they sell here is soulbound and can't be sold in the auction house, at least for transmog. We're after valuable items and quality of life upgrades, and to get them, we're going to need to maximize our trick-or-treating and daily quests, since we're going to be limited to what zones we currently have unlocked. Now, looking at the vendors, the first prize worth mentioning is the Magic Broom. It does cost 50 tricky treats, which is pretty low, and acts as an instant cast flying mount. And with the mining while mounted bug patched, this is about as close as Goldie will get back to it. And this instant cast mount could save us serious time on gathering runs, without having to hard cast mount after every single node. But the downside is it's only available during Hallow's End, so when the event ends on midnight November 1st, the broom would disappear as well. But something a little more permanent is the Headless Horseman's Hearthstone. This toy would allow us to delete our actual Hearthstone, freeing up an extra bag slot, which, as you know, are always precious. However, this one does cost 150 tricky treats, so it's a serious investment, and with our restrictions to zones, I'm not sure we'll get that many during the event. Now, another option that also costs 150 tricky treats are the seasonal battle pets. And here's where things get interesting from a gold perspective. They can actually be sold on the auction house. Now, because of their seasonality and the fact that most players spend their currency on cosmetics, these pets do tend to carry strong market values. Take the Feline Familiar. The market value is averaging around 182,000, with a solid sale average of 47,000 gold. The Widget of the Departed is similar pricing. The Cursed Birdman, lower, but a regional sale average of 26.5k. And Anaxi has a huge region average, around 227,000 gold, but we don't have any consistent sale data. Now, of course, these likely wouldn't sell fast, and the best time to unload them and get a sale is actually probably in the summer months, far from when the event is available itself. But still, they could prove to be a strong long-term investment. But What can Goldie actually do right now to gather these tricky treats? Well, unfortunately, most of the big event quest lines and stuff available from Elwyn does send us to other major cities and other zones that we simply just don't have unlocked right now, which leaves us only with a few options. First, there's a daily quest, A Time to Gain, which uses the bonfire at the Wickerman just outside of Stormwind City. Now, it only gives us one treat per day, but we can stockpile these over the event. Then, if we head down to Goldshire, there's the classic Headless Horseman Fire Dousing quest. This again is another daily, so we can do both of these every single day, and both quests award a little bit of gold and a decent chunk of experience for Goldie. So they are worth doing. And honestly, these quests bring me back years, nostalgia of questing in Elwyn with the Headless Horseman coming through. And the last thing we can do is to visit every single inn that we have unlocked, because each inn has a candy bucket that you can trick or treat from. Now, these are a one-time per event, not a daily quest, but they do give a few tricky treats each. In our case, that means checking Elwyn, Redbridge, and the Swamp of Sorrows. Of course, for players without zone restrictions, the event does offer a lot more options. You can travel across Azeroth hitting every inn, completing all the quests, and even queue the Headless Horseman dungeon in Lordran. And doing that one every day is pretty good because you can drop a rare mount. Sadly, Goldylocked can't queue due to our zone restrictions, but it's one of the cooler seasonal mounts in the game, at least in my opinion. With our Halloween event in full swing, we get a few tricky treats from the beginning quests, but now we'll just be doing our dailies every single day to hopefully get enough to buy something that'll help the character. But now it's time to move on. Because when we first tested mining in the Swamp of Sorrows, we ran into a problem. The thorium ore density just wasn't high enough, and with the zone being so small, doing straight up laps would quickly tap out all of the nodes, and then the respawns of the nodes themselves became the limiting factor. Later laps would only yield 1 or 2 nodes at a time. But it got me thinking, what if we planned something a little more efficient? A farm that could min-max this downtime? And really, what would be a better filler than the turtle farm? So here's the plan. From turtles alone, we know we can pull about 8,300 gold per hour, and mining on its own came in lower at about 6,700 gold per hour. So the idea is to do one loop of zone mining and then farm turtles for 3 to 5 minutes. This should let the thorium nodes respawn, and then we can loop it again. The question is, could this hybrid method outpace both farms? Now, of course, the route itself is straightforward. A circle of the zone and clearing the turtle camps. But I also made sure to dip into the cave on every run, since it actually holds 4 to 6 thorium spawns, along with a few mobs. And as a bonus, I think these loops might actually reset some of the open world loot bugs, which means we might actually see some transmog dropping from the cave dwellers and the turtles. So, after an hour of testing, what are the results? And firstly, our suspicion of the bugged loot seemed to be correct, because we pulled in a few transmog items. First up, the Aegis of Stormwind. This is a blue BOE shield worth about 2,000 gold. With its appearance, a piece you could easily see players buying. We also got the Dark Phantom Cape. This is a 3,000 gold cloak, and it being a full-length cloak actually looks pretty darn good. Now, we also got a handful of greens, but the only one we're actually going to list and sell is the Champion's chestplate, worth just around 1,500 gold. So that's about 5.5 thousand gold in transmog value, which really isn't bad, although it is variable. So let's focus in on the direct trade goods, since those are a little more consistent. Now, for mining in this hour, we actually got 377 thorium ore, which is more than we got in the pure mining test, which is crazy considering how much time we actually also spent killing turtles. But prices on thorium ore have dropped since our last video, from 10 to 11 gold each, down to about 7 to 8 gold each. But we still have about 3,000 gold total just from thorium. And for arcane crystals, we still snagged 10, selling at around 267 gold each for another 2,670 gold. That's close to our previous rate, where we got 12 before, but the prices are also a bit lower than last time. From the turtles themselves, the breakdown was 77 thick leather, worth about 530 gold, 20 rugged leather, worth about 127 gold, 99 turtle scales, worth about 800 gold, 35 turtle meats, worth about 130 gold, and 46 clams, worth about 582 gold if we don't open them. Altogether, the trade goods came out to 8.1 thousand gold per hour, and that's right on pace with the turtle only farm at 8.3k, and way ahead of the mining only farm at 6.7k. And remember, on all these materials from our last video, the market's down about 10 to 20% since the last test, which means, in terms of raw material input, the dual farm is actually considerably stronger. Add in the 5.5k transmog value from those extra drops, and the total gold value comes out to around 13,600 gold per hour. Of course, the trade goods are more consistent, both in the farm rates and how often you'll sell them, while the transmog will be variable. But travelers, I think it's safe to say, the turtle and mining loop is indeed a min-maxed farm. Very nice. I think it's worth noting that one thing we haven't really leaned into this zone is rare spawn hunting. And it's not that the Swamp of Sorrows has a lack of rares. There's actually 16 of them. The issue is that none of them actually stand out the way Motherfang, Fed Fennel, or Roe the Silent did. There just aren't any rares here that drop insanely valuable single-ticket items. That said, they're still worth killing, because many of the rares carry 500 to 2,000 gold transmog pieces. It's just that they're like Snarlflare and Red Ridge. You take them down if you see them, but they're not really worth camping or timing their spawns for. For example, while fishing, we've often seen Seawing running around along the shore, and he's dropped a few items in the 1,000 gold range, which is about as much as we can realistically expect here. And while flying through ore or skinning turtles, picking off rares as we spot them can add a little bit of mid-tier transmog value to the haul. But like I said, no golden tickets hiding in the rares in the swamp. So right now, the best bet is still the Sunken Temple skinning route, where we can get steady gold and some chances at rare BOEs that have insane value. But even there, most of the green transmog stays in the 1 to 2k range. So overall, Swamp of Sorrows is a little bit of a slow burner for transmog unless you get really lucky. But then again, it kind of makes up for it with some pretty good steady gold farms. But speaking of transmog, travelers, it's time for an update on our Molten Core runs. And remember, we're farming for the legendary Thunder Fury Blessed Blade of the Windseeker. And I still need both left and right bindings to drop from the boss. And did we get them this week? Well, unfortunately not. But hey, every Molten Core run is another chance at Blood of the Mountain, the Core Fellcloth Bag. Plus, as we're going through, we cleared all the Dark Iron ore, which this week netted us 1,000 gold from one run. And Dark Iron ore is exactly what I want to talk about next. So back in the Burning Steps episode, I mentioned that smelting Dark Iron ore would have to wait until we unlock Duskwood, since that's where the next mining trainer could be who could teach us some higher level smelting. But that wasn't quite right. You see, the Duskwood trainer does have the future smelting recipes, but not for Dark Iron ore. The Dark Iron smelting recipe actually comes from Gloomrel in the Blackrock Depths. And since we already have BRD unlocked, I think it's worth heading over to see what we can do. Which I guess this does make sense because Dark Iron ore is only mineable within the Blackrock dungeons and raids. And it can only be smelted at the Black Forge, which is within the mountain itself, inside the Blackrock Depths dungeon. So here's how it works. To learn the recipe, we'll head into Blackrock Depths, talk to the transporter to skip past the Grim Guzzler, and then hang a right going straight to the boss of the 7. One of them, Gloomrel, is the one we want. And we can ask him for his secrets, and he summons a Spectral Chalice, which starts a quest. The catch? This quest requires 2-star rubies. Not too much of a problem, we can get those just from mining. But it does require 20 gold bars and 10 true silver bars. Which, the raw ore themselves, that's not a problem. We can get gold in Red Ridge, and true silver is both in Burning Steps and in Swamp of Sorrows. But here's the problem. We can't actually smelt gold or true silver bars yet. That is actually gated behind Duskwood right now for the higher level mining trainer. So, does that mean our dreams of smelting Dark Iron ore early are over? Well, maybe not. So, there is a possible workaround. Gold and true silver bars can both actually drop from one specific source, solid chests, which now are more appropriately called silver-bound treasure chests, sturdy treasure chests, and silken treasure chests. These are just the chests that spawn around our current zones, and we've already looted these back in Elwyn, Red Ridge, Burning Steps, and even here in the swamp. And as an outlaw rogue, we can actually track treasure, which means we have a higher chance at spotting them because they show up as a mark on our minimap. Now the problem is, the chests are rare, and they only have a 1.6% drop rate for gold bars, and they only drop 1 to 2. So, if we get unlucky on zone unlocks and find ourselves still waiting, we may still be able to grind out the quest requirements by treasure hunting. It'll take a lot of luck, but It gives Goldie a whole new reason to keep an eye out for the chests on every turn, for Goldie to treasure hunt. Alright travelers, and speaking of hunting, it's time we finally give Herbalism a proper test here in the swamp. Now we had kind of written off Herbalism back in Burning Steppes with how poor it was, but who knows, it might be worth more than we thought here. And even if not, it's another piece of research on Goldie's road to that Explorer title. In every zone, every gathering skill, it all adds up. But before we get going, it's a new day over here in Azeroth, so the Hallow's End dailies have to get done. And travelers, check this out. Out of our pumpkin box today from putting out the Goldshire fires, we pulled the Flying Broom. Let's go. That means we can put our tricky treats towards something else, maybe a pet or that Hearthstone tool, and we get the broom early. And honestly, this broom is insanely min-max for gathering. Now, it's not a mount, but an instant cast item, so we can hop from node to node without delay. And quite honestly, it's in perfect timing for some herbalism. Now, the Swamp of Sorrows is home to a few herbs, and because we just learned Herbalism, we're going to be 1 out of 300 classic Herbalism, so to gather properly, we do need to power level up to 285, but while we're doing some pre-farming warm-up here to get the skill, let's talk about the herbs that the zone has to offer. First up is Golden Sansam. This is a high-level herb, worth around 6 to 7 gold each. But also in the zone, there's a unique herb, found only in the Swamp of Sorrows, Sorrel Moss. And this one is valued at 9 to 12 gold each. And those are pretty much the only 2 herbs you'll get in this zone, and it's about a 50-50 spread. There is some strangle kelp along the shore, but it's not really worth going over there. And honestly, during this warm-up, I'm getting excited. The density of nodes in this zone is actually insane. But because we're just leveling up to 300, we can only gather the petals from Sansam and Sorrel Moss, so we won't get a good idea of the gold per hour until we have the full skill. But with how dense the zone is, it doesn't take too long. So now that we're 285 Herbalism, it's time to test the real zone. And we're going to do 1 hour of full herb-only farming. Let's go. And the results? Well, we got 366 Sorrel Moss, valued at 4,661 gold. Not only that, but we pulled 361 Golden Sansam, worth 2,354 gold, which is a combined total of just over 7,000 gold per hour, which actually beats our base mining test of 6,700 gold per hour. Now, to be fair, the broom does make a big difference because we don't have to hard cast our mount after every single node. We do save 1.5 seconds per node. And at about 350 nodes per hour, that's actually 8.75 minutes saved, around a 15% efficiency boost, which is quite large. So, herb only is solid. But travelers, what about dual gathering? So, let's run it back. Queue up for another full hour of mining and herbing with the broom. Now this time along the way, I actually spotted a silken chest. And since we have dark iron smelting on our minds, I simply can't pass this up. And I'm glad I didn't, because inside, Warmonger. A blue BOE transmog piece valued anywhere between 5,000 and 40,000 gold. But it has a great appearance, so I'm going to assume it might go for the upper end. And that one is going straight on the transmog shelves. But let's focus on the trade good gathering results. From our hour of dual gathering, we actually got 251 Golden Sansam, about 1,635 gold, 159 Sorrel Moss, about 2,016 gold, 354 Thorium ore, about 2,692 gold, 459 Dent Stone, about 100 gold, 13 Arcane Crystals worth 3,358 gold, and 13 True Silver ore, about 69 gold. And then miscellaneous gems and whatnot worth about 75 gold, which totals up for 9,945 gold per hour. And that's without our BOEs that we got along the way. So travelers, at least during Hallow's End with the broom active, dual gathering beats both mining only and herb only by a pretty solid margin. But it is worth noting that right now on my tooltips, a lot of the current minimum buyouts are actually quite a bit under market value averages, so it looks like the market might be tanking a little bit, so the gold per hour might actually end up a little bit lower in our pockets. But either way, this is a huge result for dual gathering. And let's get this haul into the bank. But on the way, let's go ahead and drop Herbalism, just for a moment, and pick up Enchanting. Because we have some long overdue materials piled up in storage. You see, every Molten Core run, we've been stockpiling the blues and epics in our bank, the ones that are bind on pickup that can't be sold to other players, and we're holding them for one big disenchanting session. And today's the day. With bank space running low, it's time to clear out just over 2 full bank tabs of Molten Core loot, and we'll see what it all breaks down into. Now on paper, if we were to sell these straight to a vendor, the value for most of these is about 1 to 4 gold. Disenchanting them though, should average closer to 8 to 12 gold per piece. So in theory, we're coming out ahead. And for classic enchanting materials, from these ones, we're usually getting rich illusion dust, worth just over 1 gold, or large brilliant shards, also over 1 gold each. But the real prize here are greater eternal essences, going for about 8 gold each. These ones are used by most players to power level the enchanting skill. So, after burning through the entire stash, about 6 weeks worth of resets of Molten Core, and still no bindings, we got 162 greater eternal essences, that's worth 1400 gold, 765 large brilliant shards, about 1000 gold, and 197 rich illusion dust, worth 280 gold, which gives us a grand total of about 2,680 gold from disenchanting. Now this only took us 12 minutes to disenchant all of them, so theoretically, we could do 5 times that within 1 hour, which gives us a theoretical disenchanting gold per hour of 13,400 gold. That is, if you have the stockpile to do it. Now for now, I might not actually sell the enchanting materials and actually stockpile them for the future, and that's because we can't actually buy these materials on the auction house. It's never a bad idea to have a reserve on hand, especially if you end up wanting to level enchanting down the road. But okay, travelers, it's time to see where the mailbox stands. And I'll be honest, I could only see 100 mails at a time, and I don't actually know if we have enough for a token. So right now, Goldie is sitting at 197,000 gold, and with a token hovering around 320k, we're still a ways off. And the lowest I've seen the token dip recently was yesterday at 305,000 gold. And that means today, we do need 123,000 gold from our mailbox clear to buy a WoW token. So let's get going. Opening the first mails. Nothing too crazy here on Goldie, just some steady trade goods. And the first big chunk is coming from our farm earlier today. Golden Sandsam and Sorrow Moss. 1.7k and 3.3k. Not bad at all. And check this out. Some of our large mite fish sold for around 500 gold each. 5 of them netting 2.4k. And plenty more odds and ends rolled in. Thorium ore, some small stacks of thick leather, a few gems here and there, some arcane crystals, more leather again. We did quite a bit of skinning this week. And then another nice surprise. 17 large raw mite fish selling for 15k. I think these are the ones that sold when we saw the price get cranked up, and we sold them for over 800 gold each, which is a big win. So let's go ahead and clear up these first 100 mails. So that brings our total up to 245,000 gold, bringing in 47k from the first 100 mails. Let's see if the second batch of 100 can keep pace. And it's looking like we have some more arcane crystals and some odds and ends. But honestly, there's nothing too crazy here. And it looks like most of these are sales from our initial tests and fishing farms. Let's go ahead and open these up and see where we land. So the last 100 only had 14.8k, which bumps our total up to 259,000 gold. That leaves us about 61,000 gold short. So, it's time to head over to the transmog alt. Fingers crossed. Okay, only 22 mails, and they're not looking that promising. The biggest one here looks to be the Sears Fine Stein, alongside a few lower ticket transmog items. Let's go ahead and open these up, but honestly, I've noticed, and a few other gold goblins have too, that since Legion Remix dropped, transmog sales have just been way slower. Now my guess is most of the collectors who would normally buy our transmog are doing all of the collection log achievements in Remix and buying the appearances there. Can't blame them. But unfortunately, that clearout did only give us 11.2k from transmog, so we'll get it over to Goldie, but that only puts our total at 271,000 gold. And with tokens steadily above 300k, we're short. And to be frank, it's already 3:30 p.m. on the Friday before this video goes live. So we should probably just stop here, edit this video, and try again next week, right? Well, let's check the auction house, because we still have a ton of unsold trade goods. Easily another 25k sitting there. So I'd be remiss to not try to push for it now. What a better way to spend a Friday night, right? So here's the plan. We're gonna run some undercut scans on the auction house and make sure every trade good we own is the cheapest listing. And while we're doing that, we'll run some of our favorite gathering zones with the hollows and a broom for maximum efficiency, checking back every 30 minutes to keep our auctions on the bottom. And those enchanting materials we just got, let's go ahead and sell those too. I'm gonna do everything I can to get this unlocked today. Cue the montage. Alright travelers, I hope you enjoyed that little edit. It's now 8:30 p.m. and we've had some success moving items, though at lower market values. And the good news is the token price has dropped to 309k. So if we keep this pace, we just might get it tonight. Now, I also hopped onto the transmog character to pull a few choice items off the shelves and list them at fire sale prices. These are the kind of deals that any gold farmer would scoop up to instantly resell. Hopefully, we get a little gold injection that we need for the token tonight. And since we've still got the broom active, I figure we may as well scoop up some mithril ore on the side while farming the swamp. Alright, and fast forward to around 11 p.m, the token briefly dipped as low as 305k, but we didn't quite have enough gold to pull the trigger. On the upside, we've been farming quite a bit and we actually leveled up to level 74, so always nice to see some progress. But back at the mailbox, it looks like another 5k trickled in. Not bad, but the token has climbed back up to 315k. So for now, I'll keep farming and check back in on the auctions a few at a time. We'll see how it goes. It's almost midnight here, and we do have a few arcane crystals going, bumping our total up to 298.5 thousand gold. Getting close. But where's the token sitting at right now? Oh, okay. It's dropped down to 313,000 gold, which means with just a few more lucky sales, we might be in. Well, travelers, it's 12:30 a.m, so time for one last check and see if the sales rolled in. Okay, it looks like some of those mite fish did sell, which pushes us over 300k. Did the WoW token drop though? Not quite enough, still sitting at 310k. So close. But since I still need to get this video uploaded, we're going to have to leave it there tonight. But join me this Sunday, October 27th at 10 a.m. for a live stream and a mini mailbox opening. With a little luck, that extra day will bring us enough to push us over the line for a token. And if not, well, we'll grind it out there live before we spin the wheel. And until next time, travelers, go with honor.